OK, leading the programme this morning, Boris Johnson's ethics advisor, his name is Lord Geidt. He resigned last night. He argued there was a legitimate question over whether the Prime Minister had broken ministerial rules during Partygate.
Well, Lord Geidt has yet to give an official reason for leaving, but admitted in a brief written statement that it was the right thing to do.
He's the second person to resign from that role under Boris Johnson. Downing Street is reportedly surprised by Lord Geidt's decision, and the Labour Party Deputy Leader Angela Rayner has questioned how anyone can believe Boris Johnson is fit to govern following that news.
Well, for more on this, let's speak to political commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Amankona. Albie, good morning to you. Thanks so much for coming into the studio for us. Surprise resignation, do you think?
I think it's certainly been a surprise to the Prime Minister, but I think for a lot of journalists and commentators, it might have been something which we could have seen coming. You know, Lord Geidt's clearly been tussling with his position as ethics advisor for some time now. He had a difficult hearing at the Constitutional Affairs Select Committee. I think this was on Tuesday, where he said in response to a question about him whitewashing the situation that he was trying to work as hard as he could with what he's got. He also said that it was a legitimate question over whether or not the Prime Minister broke the ministerial code over the lockdown parties. So it shouldn't be a complete surprise, but I can understand why Number 10 has taken that position.
I mean, it's taken... If he was going to do it, why didn't he do it 2 weeks ago?
I think this is an interesting point that you raise, Eamonn. Had he done this, I think, before the confidence vote, it would have actually been a lot more dangerous for the Prime Minister. Doing it at this point, after the confidence vote has taken place, another one can't take place for another 12 months. It's not a real significant danger point for the Prime Minister.
So this is the second ethics advisor to quit under Boris Johnson in just over 2 years. What does that mean for Boris Johnson? It's not a great look, is it? I mean, William Ragg, Tory MP, he's called it careless to let a second ethics advisor go. What are your thoughts? Precisely.
The other ethics advisor to go was, of course, Sir Alex Allen, who resigned after he gave the Prime Minister advice about Priti Patel breaking the ministerial code over home office bullying. Rather, I think to lose a second one, it's not a good look for the Prime Minister. It's not a good look for the Number 10 operation at the moment. It's clearly a difficult situation they're finding themselves. And I think the bigger question that we need to ask, Ellie, is who is going to be the next ethics advisor? Why would anyone take that job after the last two have resigned because the Prime Minister wasn't taking their advice?
But it'll not annoy Johnson, will it?
I do not think it will annoy Johnson, no, because his focus is on remaining in power, clearly, as we have seen over the last couple of months. And as I said before, this is not a real threat to his power at the moment. Had this happened before the confidence vote, I think that would have pushed more MPs.
Unless, albeit, someone else follows him, unless this triggers other resignations, is it likely to?
I think it's unlikely to trigger other resignations. Again, I think the key danger points around resignations that we have to think about are around confidence votes, which we had and he won, and that's now passed. And I also think the next... It was, of course, around the Sue Gray report being released. That didn't happen. And I think the next big danger point for the Prime Minister is when the Privileges Committee comes to its conclusions. I think it's going to be in the autumn, around October time. That'll be the next time to be looking for resignation watch for senior ministers in the government.
And how do you think this is going down in Number 10? Because it doesn't look like they saw this coming at all.
No, not at all. I think they have said that they're surprised by this, but I come back to what I said before. I'm not particularly surprised that this has happened. Number 10, of course, they will not be happy about the situation. I think they'll be focused on trying to find the next person for the job, and I think that'll be a difficult job to do.
I'd like to see the job description that they put in the newspaper, whatever, for that. You know, wanted someone who's got very high standards and ethics and would adhere to the highest position in office to work for someone who doesn't seem to care about any of that.
Well, I doubt that will be the job description, Eamonn, but I think some of the interesting suggestions which have come out is perhaps this ethics advisor should actually be appointed independently, perhaps by Parliament, as opposed to by the Prime Minister, so that position is truly independent. So I think maybe there could be some reforms to the appointment process of this, but I don't think that would be the job description.
OK. Not one you'd want to apply for yourself, no?
No, it seems like a pretty difficult job at the moment, and I think it's going to only get more hard in the weeks and months to come.
I was just about to ask you that, because this does seem like a poisoned chalice, doesn't it? The second one to go in just over 2 years. It's a tough job, isn't it, for whoever takes it on next?
It's absolutely a tough job for whoever takes it on next. But I mean, who even knew what an ethics advisor was before Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister? And now on 2 occasions, they've been involved in 2 quite significant news stories related to ministers breaking the ministerial code. I'd like us to get back to a place in politics where these news stories aren't coming up and we're focusing on issues facing the British people, like this huge increase in interest rates, which is going to affect people on mortgages, which is going to affect, people with credit products. This is what we need to be talking about, not on these issues. And I can understand why people are concerned about them, but I'm a bit tired of these little stories coming up all of the time.
It's not a little story. It's not a little story. Where does it end with this man? It just seems to be devoid of any sort of principle or adhering to any sort of rules or standards. I mean, bit by bit, you may say isolated, but it's more than a theme, isn't it?
I think it is more than a theme, Eamonn. And the reason these little stories, as I call them, keep coming up is because of the conduct of ministers and because of the conduct of the Prime Minister. And I would just like us to get back to a place where ministers and our leaders are following the rules, by the book, and focusing on the priorities of the British people. This week it should be on the rising interest rates.
Albie, this time next week there'll be 2 by-elections, right? People will be going to the polls. Do you think this is the sort of thing that will bite Boris Johnson on the bum?
Look, I think the 2 by-elections coming up next week will be interesting to see. I've seen some polling coming out from Tiverton and Honiton, and actually puts the Conservatives a couple of points ahead of the Lib Dems, which I thought was interesting, because I think a lot of us were expecting a repeat of the by-election that happened up in Shropshire, where the Lib Dems really swept us away. I think in Wakefield, however, I think that's almost certainly going to go away from the Tories to the Labour Party. But I expect the government will use the line that, well, look, we're mid-term through a government and we would expect to be losing by-elections, but it's never a good thing to be losing by-elections.
Or indeed ethics ministers.
Absolutely.
OK. Thank you, my friend. Albie Amankona there. Thank you very much indeed for your take. Albie's a political commentator.